She changed the locks on a house she didn't own. That was her first mistake. Her boyfriend carried boxes through the front door of a property that was already frozen by court order. And I watched it all on camera. My name is Melvin Randall. I'm a 43-year-old forensic accountant. I find hidden money for a living. I find lies buried in numbers. I've dismantled corporations worth billions. So when my wife of 11 years decided to betray me, she picked the worst possible man to cheat. She had no idea the trap was already set. Her name was Petra. Beautiful, smart, and patient, or so I thought. We met at a financial summit. She was sharp then. Somewhere along the way, she stopped being my partner and started being his. His name was Rowan Vance. Self-proclaimed investment consultant. No license. No registered business. Just a smooth voice and expensive shoes he couldn't actually afford. I'd already run his background before Petra even admitted there was someone else. Rowan Vance was a fraud. A documented, provable fraud. And I had everything on paper. I just needed the right moment to use it. The morning I left the house, I was calm. Too calm. Petra probably thought she'd won. I packed one bag. I kissed nothing. I said nothing. I walked out the front door and sat in my car for 4 minutes. My hands were shaking. Not from sadness. From rage I was forcing myself to swallow. 11 years. She'd been seeing him for 14 months. I'd discovered it through a single bank anomaly. A cash withdrawal pattern that didn't match her story. I said nothing to her that morning. I was already 3 moves ahead. I'd hired attorney Celine Craft 6 weeks before I left. She was cold, precise, and expensive. She loved cases like mine. "You've documented everything?" she asked at our first meeting. Spreadsheets, screenshots, bank records, camera footage, a timeline going back 14 months, I told her. She looked at me over her glasses. "You're not here for divorce. You're here for demolition." I nodded once. She filed the emergency asset freeze that same afternoon. The house, the joint accounts, the investment portfolio Petra didn't know I knew about. Everything locked before Petra even noticed I was gone. She was still celebrating while the walls closed in. The call came 2 days after I left. Petra's voice was sharp, almost bored. "I need you to sign the house transfer. My lawyer will send the paperwork." I almost laughed. "What house?" "Our house, Melvin. Don't make this difficult." "Petra," I said slowly, "that house is in my name only. Always has been. Check the deed." Silence. "That's not." "Check the deed." She hung up. I set my phone on the table and felt the first real smile cross my face in months. She'd been living in my house, changing my locks, and letting her boyfriend sleep in my bed. The deed had never changed. My hidden cameras caught everything. Rowan moving furniture. Rowan using my home office. Rowan opening mail that wasn't his. I had 4 to 6 hours of footage across 4 cameras I'd installed 3 months prior. All of it was time-stamped. All of it was legally obtained in a state where single-party consent applied. Celine reviewed the footage and actually set down her coffee. "He opened your mail," she said. "Federal offense," I replied. She nodded slowly. "We're not just filing for divorce. We're filing criminal complaints." Rowan Vance, who had moved into my house with confidence, had just committed a federal crime on camera. The net was tightening. Petra hired a lawyer named Clifford Prue. He had a reputation for aggressive tactics and theatrical outrage. He sent a letter demanding I vacate the shared marital property and cease what he called financial harassment. Celine read it. She forwarded it to me with one line: "He doesn't know yet." We scheduled the first hearing. I dressed in charcoal gray. I brought 4 folders. I arrived early and sat in the courtroom like I owned it. Because legally, almost everything still belonged to me. When Clifford Prue walked in and saw what Celine had filed, his confident stride slowed. He whispered something to his assistant. She shook her head. The judge reviewed the asset freeze first. Clifford stood up immediately. "Your Honor, my client was not informed of." She was served, Celine said flatly. Certified mail. Signed receipt. She didn't understand the scope. Understanding is not a legal requirement for service, counselor. The judge raised one hand. Clifford stopped talking. The freeze held. Every account, every asset, every piece of property remained locked. Petra sat behind Clifford in a pale blue dress. She was gripping her purse so tightly her knuckles were white. She was starting to understand the scope now. Every second in that courtroom, it was getting worse for her. I testified about the house first. The deed was projected on a screen. My name. Only my name. Purchased 14 months before the marriage with inherited funds that were documented and traceable. Clifford cross-examined me. Isn't it true your wife contributed to mortgage payments? There is no mortgage, I said. The house was purchased outright. He paused. You paid cash. In full. On closing day. Before the marriage. He looked down at his notes. He hadn't known that. His assistant started typing fast. Petra's face went pale. The house was never hers. Not legally. Not ever. And now everyone in the room knew it. Then came Rowan. He wasn't on trial. Not yet. But Celine had subpoenaed his financial records as part of the fraud component tied to Petra's accounts. He sat in the gallery thinking he was invisible. He wasn't. Celine turned during a brief recess. She looked directly at him. Mr. Vance. You'll want to call a criminal attorney before tomorrow. He blinked. Excuse me. Federal mail tampering. It's on camera. 4 to 6 hours of footage. She smiled once. Have a nice afternoon. The color drained from Rowan's face. He stood up. He left the courtroom fast. Not fast enough to hide the panic. The financial fraud evidence came next. I traced it myself. Rowan's investment consulting business was a shell. He had 3 prior civil judgments in 2 states. He'd used different variations of his name each time. He'd been running a soft con, charming wealthy women, getting access to their finances, then draining slowly and disappearing. Petra had given him access to a joint account I hadn't touched in 2 years. He'd moved $34,000 out of it over 11 months. She didn't know I knew. I hadn't told her. I'd saved it. When Celine presented the wire transfer records, Clifford Prue actually stuttered. My client was not aware. Then she should have been, the judge said. Petra broke during the lunch recess. I was in the hallway when she walked up to me. No lawyer. Just her, alone, looking like someone had pulled the floor out from under her. You knew, she whispered. You knew everything before you left. Yes. Why didn't you say something? I looked at her for a long moment. Because saying something wasn't going to get me the house back. The accounts back. The truth on record. I picked up my coffee. This was. She stared at me. Her eyes were wet, but I felt nothing. Rowan told me you were controlling, she said quietly. Rowan stole $34,000 from you, I replied. Where is he right now? She had no answer. The afternoon session was surgical. Celine presented the camera footage, not all of it, just the segments showing Rowan opening my mail, handling documents from my office, and accessing a locked filing cabinet he'd broken into. The judge watched in silence. Clifford objected twice. Both objections were overruled. When the footage ended, the judge removed his glasses and set them on the bench. Counselor, he said to Clifford, your client's companion has potentially exposed her to significant civil and criminal liability through his actions on this property. He paused. Does she understand that? Clifford turned to look at Petra. She was staring at the floor. Celine filed the criminal complaint against Rowan the same evening. Federal mail tampering. Unlawful access to secured documents. Fraudulent financial activity across state lines. The fraud unit had already been briefed. I'd met with them 2 weeks before the hearing. By 9 p.m., Rowan Vance had 2 federal agents at the door of my house. My house, where he was still living. I got a text from my camera system. Motion alert. Front door. I opened the app. I watched them walk him out. No handcuffs yet, just to come with us. but his face said everything. I set my phone down, poured a glass of water, slept better than I had in 14 months. The next hearing was shorter. Clifford arrived looking like a man who hadn't slept. He requested a continuance. Denied. He requested mediation. Denied. The asset freeze had revealed something even Celine hadn't expected. A secondary account Petra had opened in her name only, funded by transfers from our joint account. $61,000. Moved over 18 months. Dissipation of marital assets, Celine told the judge flatly. Clifford's pen stopped moving. He looked at the documents in front of him. He set the pen down. For the first time since the hearings began, he had nothing to say. Petra took the stand. Clifford had coached her. She was calm at first. Measured. She spoke about the marriage falling apart, about feeling alone, about Melvin, me, being distant and cold. Then Celine stood up. Mrs. Randall, when did you open the secondary account at First Meridian Bank? Pause. I don't remember exactly. March 14th of last year. Does that help? Maybe. Was that before or after you began your relationship with Rowan Vance? Longer pause. Around the same time, she finally said. So the account was opened to hide money. During the affair. For him. Clifford stood. Objection. Withdrawn, Celine said smoothly. The damage was done. The ruling on the house came first. The judge's language was precise and final. The property was purchased with premarital, separately documented funds. No marital contribution to the principal. No joint title ever recorded. The house was mine. Petra had changed the locks on a house she had zero legal claim to. The court ordered her vacated within 72 hours. Personal belongings only. No fixtures, no furnishings purchased during the marriage using joint funds. Clifford sat very still. Petra made a small sound, not quite a word. Something between a breath and a collapse. I didn't look at her. I was reading the next page of the ruling. It was about to get worse for her. The financial settlement was not what Clifford had projected. Not even close. The hidden account, the dissipation of assets, and the documented fraud exposure all shifted the math. Petra's claims to marital assets were severely reduced. Her credibility was gone. The judge had seen the account transfers, the timeline, the footage. Clifford requested a recess to consult with his client. Granted. They were gone for 19 minutes. When they came back, Clifford leaned toward Celine. My client is prepared to discuss a revised settlement, he said quietly. Celine didn't even blink. The filing is complete. There's nothing to discuss. The court will rule. Clifford's jaw tightened. Counselor. We're done negotiating, Celine said. We were done the day she moved him in. The fraud unit moved fast on Rowan. His real name wasn't Rowan Vance. It was a name he'd used since his second civil judgment. A soft reinvention designed to outrun his past. 2 prior victims in other states were contacted. Both agreed to cooperate. He'd done this before. Different city, different woman, same playbook. Petra had been a target, not a partner. She'd handed him access, money, and a roof, and he'd been planning to disappear before I ever filed anything. When investigators told her this, she reportedly said nothing for a long time. I didn't feel sorry for her. She'd handed a fraud access to my life because she wanted out of our marriage. She got out. Just not the way she planned. The 72-hour window closed on a Wednesday. Petra was gone. Rowan was in federal custody pending a bail hearing his court-appointed attorney was already struggling with. His assets were traced, frozen, and largely fictitious. I drove to the house that evening. The new lock she'd installed was still on the door. I had a locksmith remove it and replace it with my original hardware. Took 11 minutes. I walked through every room. Slowly. The furniture was rearranged. Some things were gone. Some things I didn't recognize. I stood in my home office. The filing cabinet had a broken latch. Rowan's work, captured on camera. I replaced the latch. I sat down at my desk. The house was mine again. The final divorce decree was entered without ceremony. Petra received a fraction of what she'd expected, reduced by the hidden account, the asset dissipation, and the legal costs the court assigned to her side. Her credibility had collapsed on the stand, and Clifford Prue couldn't rebuild what she'd destroyed herself. She didn't get the house. She didn't get the primary accounts. She walked away with what the law said she'd actually earned, and nothing more. Clifford sent a post-ruling letter requesting a payment extension on her legal fees. Celine forwarded it to me. One line underneath. She's broke. I filed it and moved on. I received a message from Petra 3 weeks after the decree. One paragraph. No greeting. She said Rowan had told her I'd been hiding money from her for years. That he'd warned her I would weaponize the legal system. That she'd believed him. She didn't apologize. She just wanted me to know she'd been manipulated. I read it once. I didn't respond. She was right that she'd been manipulated. But not by me. She'd chosen the manipulator. She'd opened the door for him, literally and financially. She'd handed him the key to a house that was never hers. Her choices. Her outcome. Rowan's bail was denied. His prior judgments, the multi-state pattern, and the federal charges combined into a flight risk assessment the judge wouldn't ignore. He sat in county lockup while his fake career dissolved and his real name resurfaced in court documents across 3 states. The 2 prior victims were pursuing civil judgments. Petra was named as a potential correspondent in one of them, for facilitating access to a residence during an active fraud operation. She didn't know that yet. Her new lawyer, Clifford had withdrawn, would have to explain it to her. Rowan Vance, the man she'd burned 11 years for, was going to cost her for years to come. I sat in my office on a Thursday morning. Coffee. Silence. Sunlight on the desk. The same desk Rowan had gone through, now clean, relocked, restored. Celine had called earlier. The final account transfers were processed. Everything unfrozen. Everything returned to proper title. My name on every document. Clean. Petra had moved into a rental on the edge of the city. Rowan was in a cell. Clifford Prue had a new reputation problem. And I had my house, my accounts, and 14 months of documented truth that had worked exactly as intended. I'd walked out the front door with one bag and a plan. The plan worked. There was no celebration. No call to friends. No toast. I don't operate that way. I opened my laptop. I reviewed 3 client files. I billed 4 hours. I ate lunch at my desk. By 3 p.m., Melvin Randall, forensic accountant, was back to work, because that was always the point. Not the drama. Not the confrontation. The outcome. Petra had assumed I was too proud to plan, too emotional to wait, too hurt to execute. She'd mistaken silence for weakness. 11 years of marriage and she still hadn't learned how I worked. I find the lie. I build the case. I wait. I file. Then I win. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get alerts about new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.